everyone. I'm Linda Nickel, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Tonight, my guest is Ruth Hoyt. Ruth, Ruth is an accomplished bird photographer, sought after speaker at bird festivals around the country. She leads workshops in world class birding destinations, including Colombia, Ecuador, and Costa Rica. And those are the only ones I know off the top of my head. So you need to check her website to see what else she's got on the menu. She's also well known on renowned wildlife ranches throughout South Texas. And on top of all this, Ruth is also deeply committed to mentoring young photographers in the Rio Grande Valley. So in tonight's presentation, When There's No Action, Knowing When to Photograph, Ruth's going to help us explore the quieter side of photography and ask a deceptively simple question. When is the best time to photograph? This talk is about learning to trust your instincts, slow down, and recognize when a scene is already complete. You can connect with her through her website at ruthhoyt.com. And with that, Miss Ruth, welcome back to the Happiness Hour.
Glad to be here, Linda. I
Yay.
always like doing talks for your happiness hour, and I like to remind people to go to the YouTube channel because she records all these and cleans up the recordings and then puts them out just a couple of days later, and they're there for anybody to see. So I like going back and looking at them. So the title of this program is a little bit deceptive. It's When There's No Action, Knowing When, and I put and what to photograph. And it sort of meanders a little bit, but I think I'll cover everything. And if you want to ask questions, put them in chat. And I know Elaine and Linda will be watching for those, and they will pick the time that they think is appropriate for me to answer them. So the usual mindset um, when we photograph, especially nature, is to wait for the moment. We look for action, drama, the peak moment. We look for a lot of things. So, the birds will have their wings out, or they'll be chasing, or catching something to eat. That's a whooping crane, and that's where I'm going to be tomorrow, photographing whooping cranes from the boat. And butterflies, there's a lot of action in these pictures, things with wings especially. Here's a wild turkey taking a dirt bath, and when she stands up, she shakes off. Um, Here's action between a mother and her offspring. But what if the most meaningful photograph happens between those moments? So let's look at a few more pictures. Sometimes stillness says more than motion. And so it could be a bird that's perched and resting and fluffed out. All the pictures I'm going to show you tonight are not nature pictures. Some of them are still lifes and pets and things like that. So, like I said, it's a little bit all over the place, but I like to try and show pictures that people have never seen. Some you will have seen if you know me and my work, but many are have never been seen by others. Um, Here's an oriole posing as it's looking downward. It's a very still picture, very simple composition. These are bats that are sleeping. These are in Costa Rica, and these are Honduran white bats. They're the size of mice, and they sleep under the palm trees in the under the palm leaves. And if you go down and lie on your back and aim upward, you can see them in there. There's just a simple egg, very simple camouflage picture of an egg. This is a turkey getting ready to flap its wings, but it's just standing there poised and ready. So it's a still moment. And if you look, the light is very soft. There's no direct sunlight. There's no shadows. It's softer light and softer movement. Here's a javelina, and it's sniffing something. It smells something it has not sensed or smelled before, and so it just froze in its tracks and lifted its head and just sniffed. So the quiet or soft side of nature is what we're going to talk about. And I like to say that photography can be about presence. It can include subtle light changes, small gestures, shifts in atmosphere. And so what I've done is I've put a few pictures of each of these title slides that I've put together. So the power of stillness. Moments without action can carry emotion. They can tell a story, present a mystery, or show balance. And so here we've got a mama horse and her baby in the fog, and neither is moving. They're looking at the photographer, but they're very still. Nothing is happening. It's very calm, very still. Here's a Papa Northern Bobwhite with three of his chicks. Mom and dad both take care of the chicks, and dad will scout around and make sure it's safe to come in. And then he'll give the word that it's okay to come in, and that's what they do. But it's one of those very calm mornings. The water's like glass. The birds are quiet. It's very still. I was sitting in a photo blind one morning and it was very soft light, nothing happening. And this tortoise came walking along and he walked right in front of the photo blind. Nobody had to move to get out to get his picture. He just walked right in front of all of us. This was taken in Pennsylvania at a friend's house. And we were there not to photograph, but to visit. But I just had to uh, take a picture of this little chipmunk because we don't have those where I live. We have um, ground squirrels and they live underground. This is another friend's cat. It was just one of those quiet moments. Everybody was just sort of quietly talking and the cat was sort of snoozing, but it took a moment just to lick its paw. Just very quiet. You all know that for those of you who know me, the green jay is my favorite bird. And I like to take action pictures, but sometimes there's no action. The bird's just sitting on a stick, but something else happens. He saw another bird and felt threatened and felt it looked like the Green Hulk. He just got all fluffed up and he froze like that. And it was like he was holding his breath. And so it was one of those moments where I captured it and nothing was happening, but there's a story there. There's a little bit of movement in this one, but it's a male and female green jay, and he's feeding her. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I've only seen it a couple of times. So that was one of those moments that even though there's not a lot of action, for me, it was an exciting moment. And so, even though the moment is calm, the moment is still, you can still be excited. I work with kids in the summertime. And when I was doing that last summer, there was a little girl who was, um, sometimes they get a little bit lost in the field. When we go outside during the session, we take them outside and they're looking around for pictures. And I saw this as an opportunity, a teaching moment, and an opportunity for the little girl to get a picture. She was sort of quiet. And I called her name and said, "Come over here. I've got something to show you." And right from this angle, the sun was shining through the front side of the flower, but we were on the back side. And what the viewer doesn't know is that darkness is the building. So this was right there at the nature center, right outside the front door, but the light was shining on the flower, going through the petals, creating beautiful patterns, and working with a little girl. She was not sure about this, but once she got into it and got close to it, I kept saying, "Get a little closer." Then she got it. And it's just one of those moments. It's real quiet. It's real still. You can see a little spider web between the petals. There was no wind, and she got the shot. I do a lot of cell phone photography, and you can really get some nice pictures. And working with kids, especially, they don't always have a budget to get a big camera. But this is also another cell phone photo. I don't know if you all have photographed the blue bonnets of Texas, but if you get down low and lie in the grass, you can get pictures like this. You just use a longer lens, a long macro lens or a short telephoto, and just get close to the flower, and the background just blurs out. And if it's not windy, you get lots of opportunities. If it is windy, then you got to do something else. And I don't have any pictures with that, but if you have calm, this is the way I like to photograph a blue bonnet. If it's windy, I close down the aperture, use a long exposure, and just let them blow, and they make the most beautiful patterns. Another close-up. I always like to look for patterns in leaves and water drops. If it's rained, you just get the most beautiful patterns. And you can also spray it with a spray bottle, but they never quite look natural. These are natural photos. So learn to trust your instincts and learn to slow down, observe deeply, recognize when a scene is already complete. And so some of these photos are that way. This is a field of sunflowers. The valley is known for growing crops like this, and they don't do sunflowers every year. They rotate their crops the years that they do sunflowers. And so this was a sunflower year. And I always like taking people to do them because there's endless opportunities here. The scene is already set. You can do macro, you can do wide angle. If you have a dramatic sky, you can include that. There wasn't on that morning. It was a very soft light that morning, no wind. So it was a really good morning for landscape. I say, with the wide angle. This is a picture of me. It's a few years ago, but it's what I do. I like to go where there's wildflowers. I don't have that so much down here in South Texas, but when we've got a good bloom, that's where I want to be. I revert to my pre-Texas ways. I came here 25 years ago as a macro specialist, photographing 95% of my work was close-ups. I did wildflowers for a nursery, Wildflower Nursery's catalog, and I just love doing the little things that you find in the flowers. So if you have super bright, harsh light, that's not really a good time to do this kind of wildflower photography, but you saw the little girl's yellow flower with the sun coming through it. So you just have to figure out what the light's going to give you, what opportunities that you can find. And most of the time, there's something already there waiting for you. This is a picture I took of another photographer lying down in the field. And I've got a picture of her showing, how I like to do this. I like to lie down in the grass and get a low angle. And this was the picture that she was taking. She used a very shallow depth of field, wide opening. So the flower in the lower center part of the composition is in sharp focus, but everything else is closer or farther away, so it's thrown out of focus. This is a very simple composition. I would call this high key. The water was almost white from the sky glaring down on the water. And normally, when you look at that kind of a sky and white water, you don't want to take a picture. But if you simplify and remove all the other elements in the picture and just hone in on one thing, you've got a very simple composition. And the water was calm, so I was able to get a good reflection. Something to think about. The right moment isn't necessarily coming. Sometimes the moment is already here. So I'm starting out, I was on a ranch where they have longhorn cattle. Well, yeah, they're already here, but they don't really form any kind of a pattern. It's a herd of longhorn cattle, and they're very beautiful, but it's not what I was looking for. But I turned the other way, and I call this one the Texas roadblock, the South Texas roadblock. And it was the other Longhorns. They were coming in. I think they thought we were going to feed them, but all I had to do was turn around, and there they were. This little frog was in a pond, and I was photographing from a blind, and I was at a super low angle. And again, the water was calm. There was no sunshine. You can see the blue on the frog where it's where the frog's skin is touching the water and coming out of the water. The blue is from the sky. So it was a blue sky, but the sun wasn't really shining brightly. There was enough to make a catch light on the eye, but not enough to make it so bright that I couldn't get the picture. And I kept the composition simple. I could have made the frog smaller in the frame, but I chose to mostly fill the frame and go for the panoramic shot. I just like the four eyes, how they make a simple pattern, and there's nothing around it to distract. So it was just like it was when I saw it. Um, This flower could have gone in another section. I do night photography, and this was actually a night photo, but I wanted to include it in this section because it was already there. All I had to do was set up the camera and take the picture and use a very soft light to light the subject. This is a cell phone photo. This could also go in the cell phone category. And I put it in portrait mode. If you have an iPhone, they have a category called portrait. And you have to be a few feet back from the subject. But what it does is it highlights the subject, which could be a person or a flower or anything, but then everything around it was it's darkened. And so it features the subject, just like a regular portrait would be. This is maybe what you wanted to photograph, but you can't always get that. In the springtime, the tom turkeys are gobbling, and so this is in soft light. If it was in sunny light, his feathers would reflect more. All of the chest and back feathers would be copper, lit up brightly and iridescent. But with the soft light, you can still take the picture. It just looks different. So it's already there. You just have to figure out how to make it work. And so I backed off, made it a simple composition, used a telephoto lens. The background's all soft. Had it been sunny that morning, I probably would have gone in real tight on the turkey and maybe even just done a part of the body. This is a quiet moment. There was little hummingbird was sleeping, and I saw it, and I thought, well, there's nothing really happening. But sometimes you just have to be patient and wait to see what's going to happen. And a hummingbird is not going to sleep long. They need to feed about every 15 minutes or so during the daytime, and then they rest during the night. So he was resting for the moment, but I knew he'd wake up, and what he did was stretch. And I have a whole series of this hummingbird with the various stretching the wings, stretching the tail, fanning it out, and I chose this one to show what I was talking about. So photography can be about presence. You'll see subtle light changes, small gestures, and shifts in the atmosphere. And so these are sandhill cranes, and it was a foggy morning. And for the most part, I couldn't find anything to photograph because you couldn't see them. But as the sun started to come up and the fog lifted, these were in front of me with the sun behind them. And so I chose to make that picture using a silhouette. I could have exposed differently and had the detail in the cranes, but I thought this was more interesting with the soft oranges and blues, the complementary colors with the silhouettes. Here's an example of harsh sunlight. And back in the day of film, when we would do pictures of autumn foliage, like in the Smoky Mountains, I used to teach there, and the third weekend of October is the prime weekend for getting um, autumn foliage. And actually, we prefer to have soft light overcast, soft light, because the oranges and yellows and reds come out much more bright. But if you don't have that and you have several days in a row of harsh, sunny light, what you do is you just let the blue go against the oranges and yellows and let those complementary colors work to grab your attention. So this is not really what I would call a still photo or a still light, but you're given different light every morning or every evening, and it's up to you to figure out what to do with it. When you have hard light, you really can't do so much with the soft photography unless you do reflections or details, or use a diffuser. A lot of times when I'm doing close-ups, I'll have a diffuser over my subject. That way the sun can come through the diffuser, but it's softened, and so the shadows become very subtle. This is another morning with diffused light. The Oriole would not land on the aloe, and I really wanted him on the aloe. So after a while, I gave up on trying to get that, and so I put this little stick between the two aloe blossoms. And of course, he came right up on the perch. And I tell people that I made a deal with this Oriole. He wanted the orange that I had, and I wanted his picture. So I traded an orange for the picture, and this is what I got. So you can see that there's a little bit of a shadow under the tail, but it's a real soft shadow. The light was subtle, it wasn't super bright. Here's another one with very still light. This was in the evening. It was in August one year, and I had a mom and her three sons with her photographing from the photo blind, and the light was mostly gone. But for them, the experience was sitting in a photo blind. They hadn't really done that much before. And in August, nobody's at the ranch because it's so hot. But that's also a good time to go to the ranch because even though most of the birds are molting, it's super hot and you might get a bobcat because they come out in the afternoon to go get a drink. And that's what happened here. This young bobcat um, made an appearance, and I was on the far right. I didn't see it right away. Um, Jenny, the mom who was there with me, said, "Ruth, there's a bobcat." And I said, "What? Where?" And she pointed way off to the left. And by stretching out of the photo blind, I was able to see it way off on the left side, but it was real close. It was coming in to get a drink. And me, being a bird photographer, I had my long lens. I had a 500 millimeter lens, and I could not get the bobcat's face to fit in the picture. Thankfully, the bobcat was a little bit wary and she was sitting there looking. I mean, she wasn't sure what to do. She could hear us even though we weren't talking, and she was just staring at us. So I was able to stick my lens out of the photo blind, aiming all the way to the left, and I took pictures of the top half of her face and then the bottom half with some overlap over and over, up and down, up and down, up and down, taking pictures. And then later in the computer, I was able to stitch them together. And had the cat been moving, I never would have been able to do that. And Photoshop just stitched it together. I didn't have to do anything. And so this is a picture that I've always got fond memories of because I didn't realize how still that cat was sitting, until I looked in the computer, and I could have used any of the pictures to stitch them together. But, going back about the light, normally at the end of the day when the light is super low, you're not going to get a whole lot of action or color. But if you have a moment like this, that's when you get rewarded. Sometimes you'll have a little bit of action. The whole scene is very still, but this little northern bobwhite male just was standing there, and I guess he was sort of just not paying attention to anything. But I think he came out of his I don't think it was a daze. He was just standing there, but he came out of that and he stretched. And I was lucky enough to capture this picture with his wings out. When I photograph birds and other wildlife, I like to have a super fast shutter speed so that I can freeze the action. And I'm even more adamant about that nowadays. I like to have at least a 4,000th of a second, but actually preferably 8,000th. Back in those days, when I did this picture, my moving bird pictures, I tried to have 2,500th of a second. And I think part of it is that technology has advanced so much that we're able to shoot at higher ISOs now than before and reduce the noise using either Lightroom or Photoshop, Topaz, DxO Pure Raw. There's all kinds of software that'll help you with your noise reduction. This is another one of those moments. This is a crested caracal, and he's walking around in the raptor area, and I'm in a below ground photo blind, so my camera is just above the dirt level. So I'm at um, eyeball height of the bird because I was below ground and my camera was just resting on the windowsill of the photo blind. And what's happening here is he had a grass burr, a sticker in his foot, and he was limping and he stopped. And when he stopped and put his foot up, I knew what was happening because I've seen this before. And so it was one of those still moments where he put his foot up and he picked the grass burr out of his foot, and that's how he was just standing there for a few seconds, and I was able to get that. Think about what else might be possible. And I've got several examples here. I've got dramatic skies, close-ups, photos that show texture, and then photos using a cell phone camera. And a couple of others, but I needed to put some categories together. So sometimes when you're on the road and you see something, you just have to take a picture out the window. I call this drive-by shooting. And it's not necessarily a picture that you would want to print and put on your wall, but it's a dramatic sky. And I like to draw and paint. So this was, when I saw that sky, I said, oh my gosh, I've got to get that. That's a good reference photo. And so it gives me the information that I need for that. Like I said, it's not something I'd hang on my wall, but it might be something that would appear in one of my drawings or paintings. Here's another one. This one, I used a super wide angle, and you can see there's a car passing by. I purposely put that one in just for a sense of scale. Um, I have a tractor trailer picture in this same scene with a tractor trailer, and then I have one with nothing. But the one with nothing just didn't have the feeling of how massive those clouds were. So I put this one in for tonight so you'd see that. I mentioned doing night photography. You don't have to go out of town to get pictures at night. I know we all like to go to dark sky areas, and we have that in Texas, thankfully. But this is right in the middle of downtown McAllen. I was with a friend who belongs to our nature photography group, and she wanted to practice nighttime photography, but we didn't have a lot of time. And I said, why don't we just do it out here? And so we walked down the street, and there was this huge tree, and there's lights and a house behind it, but we weren't so much looking for a photo to hang on the wall. It was practicing night sky and night paint photography. I like to do night photography of animals that come out in the night. And so sometimes I will set up a scene at the ranch. This was at one of the water holes. And I had this big log, and I knew the raccoons would come in every night. And so I set up a laser beam and using my Cognosys night photography beam. And so really the raccoon takes its own picture. I was not there. I set it up and I drive away, and then I go back a little later and check to see if I got anything. I've done it with owls as well, but I don't like photographing owls at night because that's their night vision that they use to fly. And I've learned how to do it and I've done it, but I don't do it anymore. This was taken, I'm trying to remember how many years ago it was taken. It's been probably maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and we had a lunar eclipse. And I was still shooting my Canon equipment. I'm using Olympus nowadays. But I was shooting my Canon equipment. I had my camera on the tripod and I used a telephoto lens. And what I wanted to do was have a spiral of the moon as the lunar eclipse was happening. And so this was all done just, I'm going to say random guessing. So you'll see that the distance between the moon images are not consistent. They're a little bit off. And could I fix it and make it look perfect? Yes, I could. But I've always left it this way because I think it just reminds me of what I was trying to do. And so I'd take a picture and I'd wait a little bit and then I'd move the camera and I did the spiral. And the funny thing about it is you'll see that there's nine moon images in this picture, and it's from when the moon was full and you could see it all the way down to just a sliver in the middle of the spiral. And on the ninth frame, my camera battery died. I thought that I didn't get it. And I didn't know until I got home that I really did get it. So I'll never forget that night. It was really cold out. It was 40 degrees, and I don't like anything below 80 if possible. I love being in warm South Texas. But anyway, it was down in the 40s and I was all bundled up. And when my camera battery died, I was so disappointed because I thought I had missed, being able to do this, the multiple exposures. Anyway, so that's another way to take pictures. Sometimes you have weather that doesn't allow you to take pictures during the day, like if it's just raining super hard, but I still take pictures. Um, Even in the rain, I'll take pictures. Here I am with Kathy. She's one of my private students, and we were out in Colorado at her cabin in the woods, in the mountains, and we were working on close-ups. This is a close-up, not that we were taking, but it's just another close-up. I was talking about taking close-ups. It's a bottle brush. This is in South Texas. This is a close-up of another South Texas flower. These are native to Mexico, but people plant them here, so we get them here. And you can see the dewdrops. This is dewdrops. It's not from a spray bottle. This is in Costa Rica. It's a blue jeans frog. It's just another close-up. When we do little critters in Costa Rica and Colombia, we use a flash setup, um, and so our backgrounds go dark, just like it was night. We're not. This is not at nighttime, but it's in the shade, and we use the flash as the main source of light. Here's another close-up. This I took down in Brownsville. I have a friend who has a place on the river, and we were just sitting around, and there were no birds coming, but the Muscovy ducks were there, and they were just sort of hanging out and taking naps. And this one I approached not too close, just close enough so I could compose a real close-up, and he opened his eye. Here are two peaches on a plate, and I have a whole series of this, but I only chose to put this one in. And the reason I chose this one is I allowed the still life to have a really nice composition where they overlap, but not so much. But they're not just two spheres sitting next to each other. And if you look at the way the light is coming from above and to the left, and the cleft in the right peach, the has a little bit of a shadow. You have a dark side on the right and a dark on the underside, especially on the one on the left. But if you have weather that you can't work with, or for some reason you can't go outside, maybe you've been sick and you're not up to going out and using a lot of energy, you can play with still lifes. You don't have to always photograph birds or horses or starry skies, whatever your favorite thing is. It's good to diversify once in a while. Here is one that I took. This is with a cell phone, and this is just texture. I have these growing at my place, and so I have a horizontal one, and I have a closer one, and that one's a vertical, obviously. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I don't see any, but I think you caught us off guard because I was like, all right, you're on a really good clip, and I was like, more pictures. Um, well, there goes some clappy hands right across the screen for you. Ruth, my question was, okay, had nothing, well, okay, when you had the Bobcat picture,
Mhm.
um, because I've known you for a while and I know you take a lot of pictures. Is there a photo that you really regret having a big lens on? Like you're like, this is like the Bobcat, it was too
Oh,
much
yeah,
lens. Is there
that
one
moment.
that
Oh, yes, but I always carry more than one lens. And when I'm doing birds, I have I have a zoom lens now, but back then it was a 500 millimeter lens. And I was just sick when I saw that bobcat because she was so pretty and she was just sitting there perfectly. And I was afraid to move because we hadn't seen her before. It was a young cat. And so you really have to respect and watch the behavior of the whatever your subject is, whether it's birds. Some birds don't mind if you talk in the blind. The green jays don't care, but some of the smaller birds and the songbirds would care. So you always have to be really careful. And so here I am with this 500 millimeter lens, and I can't do anything because I wanted Jenny and her three kids to be able to get pictures. So I can't be shuffling around and switching lenses. So I just did what I got resourceful and said, all right, we're going to do top and bottom, top and bottom. And that's what I did. And, they were taking pictures. And the cat got a little bit hesitant. She started to walk up like she was going to get a drink. And then she turned around and went back in the brush a little bit and sat there for 15 minutes. I mean, I timed it. And I told them, I said, just don't make any noise. Don't do anything. I just, I was motioning. I wasn't saying anything. And I said, it's going to come. It wants a drink. And sure enough, it did. And while it was back there, sitting back where you could only see the feet, because I couldn't see it. Jenny was in a position where she could see it. And she says, it's still there. It's just sitting there. I can see the feet. And so while it was just sitting there, I turned around and reached behind me into my camera bag, which is always behind me when I'm in a blind, and I pulled out my 70 to 200 lens and I quietly switched so that by the time the cat came back to get the drink, I was using the right lens, and I do have full body shots of that cat.
yeah. Okay, so not counting your camera phone, Mika, I'm adding not counting your camera phone, but Mika wants to know, do you always carry a camera with you?
Well, I think generally I try to have the camera with me all the time. My phone is the best camera I've got when I don't have my big camera. So I tell my students, the best camera you can have is the one that's in your hand. And if you don't have your big camera, the cell phone is going to be it. Now, I don't generally get birds with my cell phone, but when I'm doing birds, I'm generally focused on that and I have the right equipment with me.
So with that, let's close out this session. If you have a few minutes, I'll have you come back into the room and if anybody wants to stick around for a few minutes, we can do that. All right, Ruth, I don't even know what number this is, but I love it because you will say, "Hey, when am I going to be on the schedule?" Like, "Oh, I'm supposed to put you on," versus me chasing you down and begging you to come. So I always appreciate that you're like willing to come and do this for us. It's just kind of like I've got a little catalog of Ruth stuffs. So, all right. Let's see here. All right. Well, next week, Michael White will be here to share his presentation, Freedom Framed: How Constraints Enable Creativity. So, have a nice night, and we'll see you next week.